The Supreme Court just made a move that could change everything for gun owners in America. This decision flew under the radar for many, but it carries a massive impact for anyone who carries a firearm. We are talking about a major shift in how states can handle your right to protect yourself in public. This is not just distant legal talk happening in a marble building far away. It is about whether you can be stopped, questioned, or even arrested for something you thought was perfectly legal. Many people think the big fight over gun permits ended a couple of years ago with the Bruin case. They believe the rules are set in stone and their rights are fully protected now. But that is not the full story, and getting this wrong could land you in a legal nightmare. The headline you saw online might make you feel safe, but the details in this new action tell a different story. If you carry a gun for protection, you need to understand the new reality before you make a mistake that changes your life forever. The Supreme Court is now looking at how states are pushing back against the right to carry. This involves new challenges to strict permit laws in states like Maryland, New York, and Hawaii. Specifically, the court is signaling that the era of good moral character requirements might finally be coming to an end. This is a huge deal because those vague rules have been used for decades to deny permits to honest people. We are going to break down exactly what happened, what the justices are signaling, and why this could be the final blow to restrictive permit schemes. This is a fast-moving situation that affects your ability to travel, your safety at home, and your rights during a police encounter. Staying ahead of these legal shifts is the only way to make sure you stay on the right side of the law. People who take their rights seriously know that information is the best tool for self-defense. If you want to stay informed and protected as the legal landscape shifts, make sure you are part of this community by subscribing now. We keep you ahead of the curve so you are never caught off guard. To understand why this move is so explosive, we have to look at what some states have been doing lately. Even after the Supreme Court said everyone has a right to carry, some states got creative. They started using moral character tests to decide who gets a permit and who does not. Think of it like a teacher picking favorites in a classroom based on who they like, not who followed the rules. This gave local officials the power to say no to you just because they didn't like your social media posts or your past. The Supreme Court is now stepping in to address these specific roadblocks that states put up to bypass the law. In recent orders, the justices have shown they are watching these lower courts very closely. They are tired of seeing states ignore their previous rulings by creating new, complicated hoops for you to jump through. This move is about making sure the Second Amendment is not treated like a second-class right anymore. It is about ensuring that a right delayed is not a right denied for the average American citizen. The core of the issue is whether a state can demand you prove you are a good person before letting you exercise a right. In the past, this meant a police chief or a judge could look at your life and just decide you weren't fit for a permit. There were no clear rules, no specific list of wrongs, and no way to argue your case fairly. It was a may-issue system hidden inside a shall-issue wrapper. The court is now moving to strip away that mask and force states to follow a clear objective standard. This means states might soon be forced to stop looking at your private life and start looking only at facts. If you aren't a criminal and you aren't dangerous, they shouldn't be able to stop you from carrying. This shift would take the power away from biased officials and put it back into the hands of the law. It is a massive win for transparency and for the principle that rights belong to the people, not the government. But as we will see, this transition is not going to be smooth or easy for anyone. We are seeing a massive tug of war between the highest court in the land and local politicians who want to keep control. It is a legal battle that is playing out in real time, and the consequences will be felt on every street corner. If you think these character requirements are fair, or if you think they are just a tool for discrimination, let me know in the comments. Your perspective helps everyone understand how these laws are actually working on the ground in your specific state. It is time we start talking about how these rules affect real people. The early explanation here is simple. The Supreme Court wants to stop states from using vague feelings to deny your rights. They want a system where the rules are the same for everyone, regardless of who you know or where you live. This is a major step toward national consistency in gun laws, which has been missing for over 100 years. But even as the court moves in this direction, the states are already planning their next move to slow things down. They are not going to give up their gatekeeping power without a massive fight. Now, here is what this actually means for you on a daily basis. If you live in a state that has been dragging its feet on permits, the walls are starting to crumble. You might have been told you were unfit for a permit for a reason that seemed totally unfair or even silly. Maybe it was an old bill you forgot to pay or a disagreement you had with a neighbor years ago. Under these new guidelines, those types of excuses are likely going to become illegal for the state to use against you. Imagine you are driving through a state with very strict laws and you get pulled over for a broken taillight. In the old system, the officer might see your permit and decide to give you a hard time because of a character flag on your record. These flags were often subjective and based on someone's opinion of you rather than a crime you committed. The new move by the court is designed to stop that kind of profiling before it even starts. It aims to make your permit a shield of protection rather than a target for harassment. For a first-time gun owner, this move could mean the difference between waiting 6 months for a permit or getting it in weeks. It removes the fear that a clerk behind a desk can just decide they don't like the way you look and deny your application. This is about making the process predictable and fair for every law-abiding citizen. It is about making sure your rights don't depend on which county you happen to live in or which judge is on the bench that day. This level of fairness is something that has been missing for a very long time. If you are a parent who wants to keep a firearm at home for protection, this ruling also provides a layer of security. It prevents states from creating red flag-style character traps that could lead to your firearms being seized without a crime. By forcing the government to use objective facts, the court is protecting your home and your family from government overreach. It ensures that as long as you follow the law will protect your right to defend your loved ones. This is a huge shift in the balance of power back toward the individual. This is where the story gets even more intense because the states are already finding new ways to trick the system. While we are focusing on permits, there is a hidden consequence brewing that most people are completely missing right now. If the states can't stop you from getting a permit, they might try to stop you from using it in almost every public place. We are going to dive into that sensitive places trap in just a moment. If you want to know how to navigate these new traps as they appear, make sure you stay subscribed. The sensitive places trick is the new front line in the battle for your Second Amendment rights. States like California and New Jersey have tried to declare almost the entire state a sensitive place where guns are banned. They are saying you can have a permit, but you can't take your gun to a park, a store, or even a sidewalk. It is a way of giving you a right on paper while taking it away in practice. The Supreme Court's recent moves suggest they are getting ready to strike these massive bans down as well. Think of it like being given a driver's license but then being told you are not allowed to drive on any paved roads. It makes the license completely useless for its intended purpose of getting you from point A to point B safely. The court is looking at these broad bans and seeing them for exactly what they are, a backdoor attempt to ignore the law. By signaling a move against permit obstacles, they are also signaling a move against these gun-free zone expansions. They are building a legal wall to protect your ability to actually carry your firearm. This brings us to a very important point about how the law works in the real world versus how it works in court. Even if the Supreme Court rules in your favor today, it takes time for that ruling to reach your local police department. There is always a danger zone period where the old laws are still being enforced even though they are unconstitutional. This is the time when most people get into trouble because they think the law changed instantly. You have to be careful and stay informed during this messy transition period. Let's look at a realistic scenario involving a cross-state trip that many people take every single holiday season. You might live in a state where your permit is easy to get and your rights are respected, but the moment you cross the border into a neighbor state, the rules change completely and the stakes get much higher. If that neighbor state is still using character requirements, your out-of-state permit might not be recognized at all. The Supreme Court move is the first step toward fixing this patchwork of confusing and dangerous laws. In this scenario, you could be a perfectly legal gun owner in one town and a potential felon just 10 miles down the road. That is a terrifying reality for anyone who travels for work or to visit family members in other states. The move to standardize permit laws across the country would eventually lead to better reciprocity between different states. Reciprocity is just a fancy legal word that means states have to honor each other's permits, just like they do with driver's licenses. This would finally allow you to travel without fearing a jail cell for a simple mistake. Here's another scenario that happens more often than you might think: the noisy neighbor problem. Under the old good moral character rules, a neighbor who didn't like you could call the police and complain about your temper. Even if you never touched your gun or threatened anyone, that complaint could be used to revoke your permit or deny your renewal. It was a system that rewarded people for being vindictive and gave the government a reason to take your rights. The court is moving to end this tattletale system once and for all. In the future, a complaint from a neighbor won't be enough to strip you of a constitutional right without proof of a crime. This protects you from personal vendettas and ensures that your rights are based on your actual conduct, not someone else's opinion. It brings a level of stability to your life that simply hasn't existed in many parts of the country. You can live your life without worrying that a small personal disagreement could lead to a major legal battle over your firearms. That peace of mind is what the Second Amendment is supposed to provide. The bigger issue here is that the government is being forced to treat you like a responsible adult by default. For too long, the system has been set up to treat every gun owner like a criminal who just hasn't been caught yet. The Supreme Court is flipping that script and saying the government must prove you are a danger before they can stop you. This is the trap that many states are falling into right now because they don't know how to operate without total control. They are struggling to adapt to a world where they have to respect your choices. This is where people get burned because they assume the shall issue victory means the fight is over and they can relax. But as the states lose control over permits, they are ramping up enforcement in other areas like storage laws and ammo background checks. It is like a game of legal whack-a-mole where one problem gets fixed and two more pop up in its place. You have to be ready for these pivots because the anti-gun politicians are very good at finding new ways to make your life difficult. They are committed to their goal, and you must be committed to yours. We also need to talk about the myths that are floating around the internet regarding these Supreme Court moves. One of the biggest myths is that this ruling means permitless carry is now the law of the land everywhere. That is simply not true, and believing it could get you arrested in a heartbeat. While many states are moving toward constitutional carry, the Supreme Court has not forced every state to do away with permits entirely. They are only saying that if a state requires a permit, the process must be fair and objective. Another myth is that this move by the court will automatically fix every bad gun law in your state overnight. In reality, legal changes move at the speed of a turtle, not a race car. A Supreme Court decision is like a green light, but the lower courts and state legislatures still have to drive through the intersection. You might see your state fight these changes for years through appeals and new legislation. Do not assume that a headline today means the police in your town have changed their procedures by tomorrow morning. The third myth is that these character requirements were actually keeping people safe and making the community better. There is no data to show that giving a police chief the power to pick and choose permit holders reduced crime. In fact, these laws were often used to target minority groups and people with unpopular political views. By moving to an objective system, the court is actually making the law more equal for everyone. True safety comes from clear, fair laws that everyone can understand and follow, not from secret government checklists. The truth is that the Supreme Court is slowly but surely building a framework that protects the individual from the state. They are using cases from all over the country to send a clear message to every governor and mayor. That message is that the Second Amendment is not a luxury right that only the wealthy or well-connected can enjoy. It is a fundamental right that belongs to the person working the night shift just as much as the person in a gated community. This move on permits is a huge part of making that vision a real reality. Now let's look at what comes next, because this is where the next big fight starts for all of us. We are going to see a wave of lawsuits hitting the lower courts over the next few months. Every person who was denied a permit based on a moral character test now has a reason to go back to court. This will create a mountain of legal pressure that many states will not be able to handle. It will force them to either change their laws or spend millions of dollars defending rules that the Supreme Court has already signaled are dead. The part that most people still don't see is how this affects the training requirements that many states are now making harder. If a state can't use character to stop you, they might try to make the permit class cost $500 and last 3 days. They are trying to use the cost and time of the process to act as a new barrier for lower-income Americans. But the logic the Supreme Court is using right now suggests that these excessive burdens will be the next thing to go. The court is looking at the entire process from start to finish. This is about more than just a piece of plastic in your wallet. It is about your dignity as a citizen. When the government tells you that you have to prove you are a good person to have a right, they are treating you like a subject. The Supreme Court is reminding the government that they work for us, not the other way around. This shift in tone is just as important as the legal ruling itself. It sets the stage for a future where the Second Amendment is respected in every state house and every city hall across the country. Going forward, you should expect to see more emergency sessions in state legislatures as they try to pass workarounds. You will see more angry speeches from politicians who claim the Supreme Court is making the world more dangerous. But you should also see more people finally getting the permits they have been denied for years. You will see more families feeling empowered to take their safety into their own hands without fear of a character trap. This is the rising wave of freedom that we have been waiting to see for decades. This matters in the long term because it creates a permanent record of what the government can and cannot do. Once these character tests are gone, it will be very hard for any future government to bring them back. It creates a baseline of freedom that protects your children and your grandchildren as well. We are watching the legal foundation of our country being repaired after years of neglect and bad rulings. It is a slow process, but the progress we are seeing right now is truly historic and should not be ignored. Think about the human side of this for a moment and why it really matters to the average person. Think about the single mother who works late and has to walk through a dark parking lot every night. In a moral character state, she might be denied a permit because she had a minor dispute with an ex-boyfriend that is on file. That unfair denial puts her life at risk every single night she goes to work. The Supreme Court's move is about her right to stay alive and her right to be treated fairly by her own government. Think about the retired veteran who moves to a new state and finds out his decades of service mean nothing to a local clerk. He is forced to jump through hoops and prove he is fit to carry a tool he used to defend the country. This move by the court is about respecting his experience and his rights as a free American. It is about removing the insult of having to beg for a right that was already bought and paid for. This is the emotional reality that sits behind every one of these dry legal documents. When you are stressed or scared during a police interaction, you need the law to be your friend, not your enemy. You need to know that your permit is valid and that you have followed every rule to the letter. These changes from the Supreme Court are designed to make the rules so clear that there is no room for mistakes. They are trying to take the guesswork out of being a responsible gun owner. This makes everyone safer, including the police officers who are just trying to do their jobs in a complicated world. The bigger picture here is that we are witnessing the end of a century-old system of control. This system was built on the idea that the government should decide who is worthy of self-defense. That idea is dying, and it is being replaced by the idea that every citizen is worthy by default. This is a massive win for individual liberty and for the core values that this country was founded upon. It is a moment of clarity in a time that often feels very confusing and divided for all of us. As we wrap this up, remember that the Supreme Court's move is a powerful signal, but the work is not done. You have to stay active and stay informed about what is happening in your specific corner of the country. These rulings give us the tools to fight for our rights, but we still have to be the ones to use them. Whether it is checking your local laws or supporting groups that fight in court, your involvement is what keeps these victories alive. Freedom is not a spectator sport, and it requires constant attention from all of us. The 3 biggest takeaways from today are simple but very important for you to remember. First, the good moral character test is on its way out and being replaced by objective facts. Second, states are trying to use sensitive places and high costs as a new way to block your rights. Third, you must stay cautious during this transition period because the laws on the street might not match the rulings in court yet. If you keep these 3 things in mind, you will be much better prepared for whatever comes next in this legal battle. This matters for your long-term safety because it ensures that your right to carry is not a privilege that can be taken away on a whim. It protects your family by making sure you have the legal standing to defend your home and your community. It protects your freedom by putting a check on government officials who want to overstep their bounds. This is about the fundamental promise of America, that you are free to live your life and protect your loved ones as you see fit. That is a promise worth defending every single day. You now have a clearer picture of the massive shifts happening in our legal system right now. You understand the character trap, the sensitive places trick, and the reality of how these laws actually change. You are more informed than the vast majority of people who only read the headlines and move on. That knowledge is your best defense against a system that is often confusing and sometimes even hostile. Use it wisely and stay responsible as you exercise your hard-won rights in the coming months and years. We are part of a community that refuses to stay uninformed and refuses to let our rights be whittled away in secret. If you want to keep getting these deep dives into the legal news that actually affects your life, hit that subscribe button. It is the best way to make sure you never miss a critical update that could change your legal status. Also, drop a comment below and tell me if your state is still using these character tests to deny permits. We need to know what is happening in your area so we can keep the pressure on. The road ahead is going to be full of more court cases and more legislative battles, but we are moving in the right direction. Every win in the Supreme Court is a brick in the wall of protection for our Second Amendment rights. We will be here to break down every single move, every new law, and every major court ruling that comes our way. Thank you for being a part of this mission to keep Americans informed, safe, and free. Stay sharp, stay legal, and I will see you in the next one as we continue this fight together.